Right, even before we come back on air, the conversation had already begun here in our studios, right here at the headquarters of KTN, the Standard Group, along Mombasa Road. And I'm with the brilliant minds tonight, as I told you earlier on. I am with the woman representative of Nairobi County. I'm talking about Esther Pasi, representing the women, the voices of the women here in the country. And of course, I know she has been affected by some of the deaths of the women that she represents here in Nairobi County. And also, let me just, still on that line of parliament representation, I have Gloria Oruba, Senator. She'll be talking to us, what she feels her take. And of course, some of the policies that have been put in place. We know that Airbnbs are governed through the Tourism Regulatory Authority Act, but is that enough? Are women protected when they get into these rooms? And of course, from the president's side, we have the president's advisor on women's rights. I'm talking about Harriet Chigai. I got the pronunciation correct, yeah? Harriet Chigai, representing the president's, will be representing the president's sentiments right there when it comes to women's rights. What are their rights when these cases land along the corridors of justice? I know one of the suspects has been arrested, but what is the government saying about protecting women? And from FIDA, if not forgotten FIDA, they issued a statement concerning these deaths. And we shall be having, actually not we shall be, but we are having on set Irene Ochola, who's the Client Services Officer representing FIDA right there, the voice of the women. What is FIDA saying? What are they standing for? And of course, even the men have also talked about this whole issue. Why is FIDA not defending them when it comes to this whole incident? I know, Esther Pasi is just looking at me like, what do you mean? But the men have also been talking on the social media platforms concerning these deaths that have happened. And of course, Pauline Maniki, an advocate, joining us virtually in this conversation. Ladies, thank you for joining us tonight. It is a women's panel. We want us to talk about women issues. This incident that has happened last week, this week, and today another woman was actually killed. And police are trying to put the pieces together. Is that connection with the previous murder cases, or is it a network of suspects targeting specific people? And it's the saddest part is young women in their 20s. You know, that for example, it was a university student, a 20-year-old university student. Let me begin with Pauline Maniki, joining us virtually, an advocate. Pauline, I'd like to pick your mind on this whole conversation. What is your take?
All right. Thank you very much. It is indeed a pleasure to be joining you virtually. My take, first and foremost, personally, is that it is really, really saddening that such a murder is going on. And I would like to urge each and every woman, each and every girl, each and every man or boy, just be careful when you are out there going to meet someone for a date, for dinner, for lunch, or for anything. I am calling upon someone, when you're going out, please let at least one or two people know where you are, who you are with, the phone numbers of who you are with, even sending a pin location of exactly where you are. And I'm really, really saddened by these murders, and my heartfelt condolences to the families that are affected. And on a legal note, indeed, we see that that is criminal law, because that indeed is murder. And we can see that in the aspect of murder, when we are discussing murder, we usually have two ingredients to murder. Number one is the mens rea, which is the intention. And number two is the actor's rea, the actual intention. So when these murders are happening, the perpetrators of these murders, did they have intention in the first place? Was it a calculated move to lure these women into their death? Or is it there's usually an arrangement and maybe they're already there, and this woman or this lady does not give in to the demands that the perpetrator wants, and then it ends up now being to the death of this particular person. We have laws in Kenya which pertain to the criminal law, the aspect of murder, the aspect of attempted murder, and also the aspect of manslaughter. Again, we also need to check into the regulations of the various not just Airbnbs, but also hotels and everything. When people are checking in, what information is collected? Is it that you check in, you as the person who has paid for that particular Airbnb or room? Is it that only your data is collected, or you are also required to disclose who it is you're getting into that particular Airbnb or room with, and the details of this person, like photocopy of ID, details, phone numbers, details of even the next of kin? Or are people also booking in disguise or in other identities that are not real? So those are things that we really need to look into, and we also need to face the reality of what is happening. And I agree that it's not just women who are being victims, but also men have also been victims. So we need to look into all those aspects, and so that we can get to where is the problem and how do we deal with this, based on actually addressing the real issue and identifying the root cause, so that we can come up with a solution and a way forward to safeguard our women and to safeguard our men as well. Thank you.
All right. Pauline Maniki, allow me to say asante sana. I know you've spared your time today. You're supposed to be with your loved ones and your friends celebrating your birthday. Allow me to say happy birthday and enjoy your evening. Enjoy your evening.
My birthday. Thank you. Yes.
All right. Enjoy your evening. Good night, and thank you for talking to us on that part of the legal aspect of this whole discussion that we're having. Let me begin with Nairobi, woman representative Esther Pasi. Your heart is bleeding for these women and families.
You know, I have a daughter, and when I see other women or families going through such horrific, tragic, publicized cases about their loved ones. I mean, remember, this is a young girl raised by parents probably through the thick and thin of life. And they had such hopes for her. And then she becomes a statistic. And a statistic, you know, there are ways that you die in your old age or from an illness. You know, somebody's unwell, you've got cancer or something, you know. Your families are prepared for that. Mm-hmm. But this kind of femicide that we're witnessing in Kenya, which is cult-like, which is serial murder-like, which is so graphic, so painful. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know how any parent can heal. So the first thing, as we talk about these souls, not just the ones lost this month, mm-hmm. the souls that have been lost over the years. From Sharon, when I see a pregnant woman, I still remember Sharon and what Sharon went through. You know, being pregnant, being stabbed, being raped. I mean, Ivy, outside the university, you know, and now Starlet. It's horrific, and my prayers go out to the families, the friends, the community, the country. You know, it's painful, very, very painful. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any woman out there who has read any of these stories, heard the witnesses that came forth after the case came out for Wahoo, and you heard their story. I'm so proud of them for coming out and reliving that pain by talking about it, because that, I hope, will keep that man behind bars. And you know, sometimes I feel that, you know, we've scrapped the death penalty, but people like that really should not be living on our taxes.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. And I mean, Senator, you represent the young people in Parliament, and let me just specifically the Senate. As women legislators, you know, along the corridors of Parliament, what legislation are you planning to come with when it comes to regulating these Airbnbs? Of course, we know there is a policy under the Tourism Regulatory Authority on how Airbnbs need to operate, the license that is required, what is supposed to be an Airbnb and what is supposed to be a lodging. Mm-hmm. But in terms of serious regulations that ought to govern these places that we've seen so many women lose their lives in, what are some of these regulations that you're likely to come up with?
First of all, let me say that this is very sad. But let me also point out that this has been ongoing for many years. The difference is that there is a lot of access to information. You know, someone said, oh my goodness, of late people are getting murdered. People have been murdered since we were not born. The difference is that there is media, it's highlighted, there's awareness. You know, by the time the incident happens, we don't have to wait till 7 o'clock to get the news that is limited to a specific conventional news channel. So what is happening is that there is just, the information is out here for us to consume. So, and that's what makes it even more real. Because before we were sort of, we were protected by the lack of information. And so there was this thing that it was safer in the times of so and so. No, it's just that we didn't have this medium of communication. And it's really sad that we have to talk about the same kind of femicide over and over. And I'm sure, I hate to say this, but in another 10 years, I can imagine another set of women sitting here talking about, you know, what can we do? On the side of regulation, you know, we don't need to draft a bill. There is a committee in Parliament, both the National Assembly and the Senate, that is completely underutilized. It's called the Committee of Delegated Legislation. I'm a member of that committee. That committee basically works hand in hand with the executive in terms of regulations. So you have the Mother Acts, that is the law, the Parent Act, and then the different ministries. So say now the Ministry of Gender, and I invite them to this, to be able to now draft like either a new set of regulations to present to the Committee of Delegated Legislation, either through a Mother Act, for instance, the Tourism Regulatory Authority. Underneath there are some regulations, and all we have to do, you know, the technical work behind, once now I've been in Parliament, is not as heavy as it appears. That we don't need a new bill. We just need to put our heads together as people who care, parents who care for their children, Kenyans who care for their safe societies, and say, fine, we want to push for tourism, but we need to put some sort of framework that is going to encourage safety. A very basic one would be Airbnbs in the US, in the UK, in Europe, in the few places that they operate. Some areas are restricted. You simply cannot be accredited as an Airbnb in some areas. So for instance, the crime rates, and I take this just by way of example. For instance, if the crime rate of Kilimani is at a certain percentage in comparison to where the crime rates are in different places, then the governments of these specific countries say that, I'm sorry, because the manner with which your business is operated, it invites criminal activities. So they just say, for instance, Kilimani, no Airbnbs. So anyone who's trying to get on the platform to register their piece of property from Kilimani will automatically be shut down. You cannot actually run it. And that's one way to also deal with the issue of insecurity, because what that will mean is that either the tenants or the property owners of that area will realize if they want to be able to participate in that industry or business, then they have to create safe spaces within that community. That would mean perhaps maybe controlled CCTV, community awareness, more of how to know who are the strangers, you know. So now you throw it back to the community, like, hey, if you want to participate in this industry, these are some of the things that you have to do as a community. But can I just say one last thing in terms of, you know, because you asked me as a legislator. Yes. But I want to challenge you as the media personality. There are three things, and I'm reminded by my friend that we become the stories we hear, or we become the stories that are told about us, or we become the stories that we create. And if you look at what's been happening in this country, we are producers of bad news, you know? And even our creative economy is now tailor-made against, it's around how a big haste of money, you know, a murder case. I mean, what happened to love stories where people just love each other, you know, in peace? So it's
more like what you're trying to say, Senator, is that the information that the media is giving, it sort of like escalates.
Not only, it actually dictates. Because if every other Kenyan series that I watch is about stealing money or getting rich quick or getting away with murder, these are the people that we're bringing up. I have a 16-year-old son, and right now anime is a big thing. He is all wild, and the people in that, it's about anime or these games and this, and their mindsets are actually being carved into certain creatures. So, you know, I mean, we are having people being killed, and then they're dismembered, and then somebody is like running away with their heads. Where did they get that from?
All right. So now, I did a bit of some. I'd like to ask our director Okedi, just to put it on the screen for our viewers. There's some of the new directives to the lodging operators that the Ministry of Interior had issued. And one of the requirements is that private security officers, if you can just have that on our screens, please, some of the private security officers to retain the identification documents of accessing accommodation facilities, security officers to temporarily withhold the identification cards for the visitors until they leave, security officers to record the current and accurate log of all vehicles, rickshaws and motorcycles, operators of Airbnb and lodging to ensure CCTVs are working, maintain an updated access control panel, and maintain a security occurrence book to record daily occurrences. That is a new directive from the Ministry of Interior to private security officers who are manning different places, the lodges. And so I would direct this question to you. I mean, even for the owner of the property of Rai coming out to say, from my website, this booking was not done. But yet, there's someone who accessed this room and a woman's life was lost. What does it say about business operations here in the country? A foreigner coming, no details are given in terms of the website, but still accesses a premise where a murder has happened.
Well, first, thank you very much for having me here tonight. Allow me to start from the laws and regulations. We have the Tourism Act and we have the Tourism Regulations. So in terms of laws, the laws are already there. When you look at the criminal proceedings and criminal procedures in this country, we have the Penal Code, we have the Criminal Procedure Code. So the laws are there. The question is, how well do we make use of the laws? We also need to appreciate that Airbnb is a new business entity in this country.
But now you see, the thing is,
and just allow me to finish.
Let me just cut you short.
Yeah.
The reason as to why, it's because already the Airbnb Association has come out to rule that this particular premise was not registered as an Airbnb.
I was coming to that. So you realize that there's a whole of when you have new entities, there's all these regulations, the laws that have to come in place, and then there's the owners of the business. So number one, Airbnbs must be regulated. There's no two way about it. They must be defined within the existing laws, and they must be regulated. Number two, you realize that all these cases have happened within a precinct of environments that people are living there. The South Sea case, the guy went in and walked out all bloodied, but by the time we discovered it was a murder, it was, I mean, way too late. Maybe a life would have been saved if the alarm was triggered early enough. So we are also coming in too late to make these discoveries. And there goes the question now you're asking, where are the gaps? The lady has a business. There are processes and procedures on how you can actually log in, book this facility, and pay and walk out. But somehow we went around that and got a booking, and the gentleman even used a fake identity card and still walked out, and this body was discovered. And it is really saddening because this particular case of dismemberment, you realize that that particular room was as clean as it was booked.
Yeah.
From the media and from the reports that we are receiving, it tells us that the person who did this is skilled. Yeah. It also tells us that they are prepared to do this. So it's a criminal racket. There's no two-way about it. And when we have a criminal mind, then they go far beyond to do exactly what has been happening. So it's not a question of identity, because if it's identity card, it was given. Yeah, and it was a fake one. So it tells you the criminal mind in this particular case goes beyond regulations.
All right.
It also tells us that we now need to move in very quick, not only to discuss these issues, but we must also tell the law enforcement agencies, the investigative agencies, that these cases will not take long to investigate. It is good that suspects have already been arrested. We also want to know how was evidence collected, how was this subject matter arrested, and in this particular case, the suspects. How are we going to place the suspects in this particular matter and ensure that prosecution is done? And the courts, who are the end seal to this, also play a big role, because we have investigations done, either they are properly done, they are not properly done. Matters go to court, they take quite a long time. Remember, the victims' parents and the victims' relatives are hurting. So the wheels of justice also needs to move really quick and really fast.
All right.
And that starts with investigations up to the time we prosecute and up to the time sentencing happens.
All right.
So you realize the kind of pronouncements are good, because it goes into tightening the regulations that are already in place. But we also need to move faster. And even the society, the community, you know, when we were growing up, our neighbors would know what is happening in the next house. We as a community have also decided to look on the other side. We really don't care what is happening in our surroundings.
It's like Nyumba Kumi is not working.
You know, Nyumba Kumi is not working, because if it was working, we'd be able to know this guy came in here and walked out, and he walked in with a lady and has walked out alone.
Right.
Where is the other partner?
Right.
You know, what is really happening? So either the society is now hiding itself. We are hiding within ourselves, within our problems, and we have forgotten that we have a bigger responsibility to the society at large. I should be able to come across a robber's son doing something wrong, and I say, hey,
you're correct.
I am your mom's friend.
All right.
I am your neighbor, and I think what you're doing is not right. Let's go. Grab that hand and walk into a robber's house and say, you know what, a robber? I found your son doing this and I think it was not right. And as parents, I think we need to do community parenting. But having said that, a lot needs to happen.
All right.
The societal frock is completely broken. This is about the society.
All right.
It's completely broken. And it's something that needs a 360 approach.
All right.
For us to be able to get to the root cause of this issue.
All right. And Irene, I mean, when FIDA gave that statement concerning these murder cases, the question would be, and that is something that Chigai has talked about, the wheel of justice. But as a country, are we really losing the war to justice when it comes to drawing the line on justice achieved and justice denied? Because some of these women reported their cases and they allege that they reported at the police station, nothing was done. But when a starlet whose case came out, that is when now the statements were being collected as evidence against the suspects.
I am curious, on top of the statement that FIDA gave, we are curious whether there is something in society that's being lost in terms of sensitivity to violations. Are we normalizing things that we really should not normalize? Sometimes we get involved in spaces where we learn from one another. And I think in terms of borrowing knowledge and practices from one another, we go to the space where we cease to do what Chigai is saying. Question, is this the path we want to go? And I think we need to go back to where we actually go back to opening spaces of curiosity, conversations that can actually help keep us safe. I think we may be a little too closed out. We may be a little too not concerned about risks and vulnerabilities that we actually run as a people. And as we tolerate the risks and the vulnerabilities, I think then the frock of society gets torn and torn and torn. Right. And until someone is voicing their concern on a loudspeaker, we almost don't even hear it, maybe don't even notice it. So I think we need to go back to those safe spaces of conversation.
All right. And Pasaris, are women living a dangerous, because it looks like women are living dangerous lives outside here. Because when we are looking at some of the victims that, the victims of these suspects, they're talking about being lured with money, we'll do this, we'll do that, I'll pay you this. Money and soft life seems to be driving women, young women, to their early graves.
You know, social media has opened the way to opulence. Everybody wants to have that amazing life. You are under pressure, peer pressure, to wear that dress, wear that shoe, have that makeup, have that hairdo, live large. And of course, it could lead you to let your guard down, you know. And I think maybe what we need is to really highlight some of these dangers. I think people are not aware of the dangers of online dating. You know, you meet a stranger and then you meet him in an apartment in an area that you're not familiar with, right? Or you don't go with a friend. You're exposed, all right? I don't think it's the women leading or living dangerously. I think we live in a dangerous world, all right? We live in a dangerous world. Even if getting in your car is dangerous, you know, driving on a highway, you might not be the one who's drinking alcohol, but somebody else is drinking alcohol, so you're exposed. So we live in a fast-paced, dangerous world. Unemployment is very high. Mental health is very high. Cult lives, we've seen with Mackenzie's and Shakahola, cultism is in Kenya, where you find victims who are dismembered and then heads are missing or parts are missing. We live in dark ages. We live in the last days, you know. We live in a world where you can't trust even your father. You can't trust anyone, you know. I mean, how many children do we know who are defiled by their fathers, all right, or their uncles or their brothers? So for me, the girl child, you know, every time we talk about the girl child, people come on social media and say, what about the boy child? I think as women, we care about all the children because we give birth to them. And right now, I feel that the world is bad. We're a capital city, but this Kiambu today, another victim. You know, I think social media is bringing the information to us at real time. I just want people that engage on the deaths of these victims to understand that they are human beings. Don't condemn them even in their death. You know, they were murdered. The way you dress, even if I walk naked on the streets, doesn't mean give you the right to rape me. You know, we had My Dress, My Choice in 2014. Then we had Her Life Matters in 2019, and now we've got, you know, we've got femicide in our faces. I feel that, you know, we need to create opportunity.
Right.
We have very high unemployment. We need to train our boys to be more responsible, our young men. We've got single mothers. It's an epidemic. I mean, we've got single mothers everywhere. These children came from some man somewhere who is not responsible. So here is this woman who has to provide for these children, and then she chooses a way that she thinks this is the best way out.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. And Uruba, the people who are justifying, sadly, and you know that is what Pasaris is talking about, let's not justify these lives that were lost. Like some of the people who think like, okay, what were they doing there? You know, but it's good, Pasaris has explained it. But then the problem starts with the dating sites, providing false information. I mean, what starlet who went through, what other victims have gone through, you know, when they've come out to record their statements, the sort of description they were given on these social dating sites.
It's called victim blaming. They always like to blame the victim. You come out here, you say somebody has touched you badly. Ask me. They'll be like, but but even you smile a lot. Why are you smiling at people? So we normalize it. So and then people stop reporting. You know, how many women reported this particular individual, and I can assume at the gender desk, they just took it, filed. They're like, oh, kesi yako tunaangalia, don't worry. Kesi yako tunaangalia, don't worry. Then suddenly there comes this very gruesome murder, and it's like, well, leteni zile files zote, kumbe ni huyo mtu, right? So we've normalized it. So, I mean, you can't, it's like people want to assume that they are not part of the problem. Everybody is part of the problem. Every single person. The authorities are part of the problem, because when you normalize something, then people stop reporting and people think that's normal. And even the aggressors now realize that, hey, I can get away with this. I mean, the issue of Matara, he started small time. He got away with it, and then he was like, okay, let me upscale this operation.
But you know, Senator, the question is, let me give an example. I'm the man here, you're the woman here. On a dating site, there's Tinder, I think, and Tagged. That's where some of these victims met their perpetrators. I give a false name to you, I put a false picture, and everything looks very rosy. And yet, you are very ready to meet me, a stranger that you do not know, who tells you I love you, and now we get into this room, and now the murder happens.
You can't blame the people who are on those platforms, because some of these people are born into those platforms. You know, I'm born in 1986. We used to go outside and play and find boyfriends while we are playing, or in class. We would see people and be like, I like this one can be my boyfriend, right? That was then. Now they're playing online. So you can't try to dissociate this new lifestyle from what it is, because their kids actually born 90s have been born into online dating. Born 90s, 2000, from early 2000, those are people who their only form of socialization is online. You know, I have a Facebook account. When I'm with my son, sometimes like, oh no, then they're on Instagram. You know, it's like you meet someone, you don't even lift your face up to say hi. You're just like, give me your Instagram account. You know, that's their life. That's the life that they're living. So even now trying to understand, this is a fake account, this is a fake picture, that's you're going like tier 2, second level. For me, I bring it back to, why are we suddenly having all these deaths and all these stories that are so normal? Because the first small thing that we should have said no and raised fire up the mountain, we normalized. We said, that's a small thing, you know? And it's the same thing even within our households. Because you will have, for instance, a cousin who's living with you, who is maybe not even sexually abused, but who maybe one of the relatives makes a weird pass, maybe like smacks her or something. And then she reports and you say, where watch her? So you've literally opened the door to rape.
You're okay.
Yeah, so for me, it's like, pull it back, forget the online, forget all of that stuff. Because even online, it's the same fundamental basis. It's like, if the person does not have a profile picture, why are you even chatting with that person? Because we have normalized the small mistake.
Right.
Yeah, so it's the culture of, first of all, you know, as a legislator, I'm always reminded, you cannot legislate bad behavior. Bad behavior will be bad behavior. With all your laws, with all your regulations, with
it is
everything,
still bad behavior.
You can't legislate. You actually cannot create a law that will make a person who has horrible behavior suddenly become a person with good behavior. So I still take it back to this. It's the power of the narrative.
The
For
narrative,
me, it's the narrative that we create, because it's the stories we tell. It's the stories we hear, the stories we tell, and the stories that people tell about us. Everybody right now, any teenager, any aspiring influencer has a mentor secretly that they follow, and they're like, I want to be like this person. Why? Because this person is a certain way. There's someone looking at me now, they're like, I want to be like Gloria. Yeah? So, and if all those stories that we tell are about normalizing crime, it doesn't matter if we ban Airbnb.
All right. So I was actually coming to you, Chigai.
Okay.
So can that substantiate the sort of life that we're seeing young people live in? Because the question would be, why is it happening to the young people? I mean, these are young lives lost.
Allow me to say this. I earlier said that the society of Frog is completely broken. starting from the family values to how we even relate as even colleagues, even at places of work. There's a lot of GBV in all formats, but we have normalized it. Look at our cultures and how we treat women generally. And we have allowed young men to grow knowing that it's very normal to disrespect young girls or women, even their own mothers. Until they're old enough, then they realize, oops, I can actually treat my mother differently because she is my mother. But you still treat the women around you in a very disrespectful manner. And that is something we have normalized, you know? It almost goes like, what are you talking about? You don't even have space, you should not even talk here. You're a woman anyway, you know? And we have normalized that. Ask any woman who has been hit or any woman who's been hurt in any way. You go to the police station. Who do you find there? More perpetrators who are supposed to process these cases. They don't hear, they don't see.
So what is the government doing? Because you are an advisor to the president when it comes to women agenda. Because now you are saying that, okay, we go to the police station, you'll find some of the perpetrators are there, and also what the picture
statement of the problem.
Yes,
that
and
is
what was the picture
the
that Senator Roba has painted. You know, you just pile and pile and pile, then when something happens, you're like, oops, the files need to come out.
And that is why we are saying there's this issue of polycare that has been discussed for a long time. Solution-oriented proposals have already been made. You know, policies are there. Are we going to train the police who are handling GBV matters, including even the media? Are we sensitive to GBV cases, GBV matters? And just like I said, this is not a one approach. We need all hands on deck to combat issues to do with women and children in this country. And I can also say that there's a hashtag that has been going on last year. And women, by the way, even as women, we have normalized violence against ourselves. It's very normal. There's a hashtag that has been going on for a very long time, Fear Women. Exactly. That in itself is GBV, because you're fine-tuning young minds to look at women as social misfits or something. And we have lauded that hashtag, and I've talked about it for a long time. We have normalized that hashtag, and to an extent now that the same women have also been made like almost enemies of the society. Women naturally are supposed to be caregivers, they are naturals, they are what, but we are almost demonizing the girl. And we are also bringing our young men within that space, you know? And remember, even as we bring up children, children learn from what they see and what they hear. If you bring up children within a broken home, and the male in that home is driving these children to the wall because in their mind they think the person they are hurting is the woman. But then you discovered when your child is 15, 16, 18, they want to claw you back as their father. Why? You were never there as a father. You don't respect your space as a father. You have left that responsibility to the women. And then you demoralize your own children, because look at, especially the young men from broken families. It's a whole load of work to bring up these young men. But you find the male figures within that space have completely neglected their roles. We have seen current court cases, and I just want to bring the statement of the problem, because even if we have 10,000 laws and the problem remains within our households, there's nothing we are going to solve.
So it based on where we are coming from.
We have to look at where is this problem emanating from,
Then
we start solving
Although
it from that space.
I think I will take up your challenge. You asked her what is the government doing?
Yeah.
Because I know it's easy for someone to say, what is government doing? You're the gender advisor. I'll take her up on that one, because one thing I think we can do that's very easy for this gender desk is, and I'll speak to Chigai behind this, is no, I think we should have every single person at the gender desk pulled together in some level of summit, workshop or something, so they can understand what the end game is with that gender desk, and it's not just a form of churning in reports, because I think they were put there and they're not motivated to know, you know, like now if you ask for statistics of all the cases that you have received in a certain police station, how many have actually gone to court, convictions and what, there's no motivation, that gender desk in the police service requires like a whole department. It needs to be structured properly. Let me
get Uchula's mind here. Of course, we are not justifying that women are just being lowered, or rather lured to their perpetrators, if I may put it that way, because of money, you know, sex and money has made, you know, some of these women to do what they are doing. But there's this whole stigma, because some of these victims were saying, we reported to the police station, like the case for Matara. I really don't want to talk about it so much because it's still in court, it's a live case in court. They were saying that we feel stigmatized, those threats, like if you talk about it, I'll get the photos that I took during the act. That stigmatization has really made so many women to keep quiet.
It's very true. Allow me to actually start by saying that let's not forget that in Kenya, we've said severally that we are sort of having a mental health crisis. We are very vulnerable. Our abilities to deal with things negative is very fragile. We were having conversations with student leaders from the university the other day, and we were shocked to actually hear that some of the risks and vulnerabilities that the women there run is the consequences of rejecting advances. And I say, I'm in school to study. So if I am here to study, but I'm also having to balance the consequences of telling you, I don't feel you, I don't want to be in this, that I'm fearing consequences. I think that is a problem. And the stigma grows beyond educational institutions. You hear women going to report rape. And I'm going to refer to an example there, and I'm not going to say what police station, and the young girl has been raped, and the woman gender officer actually tells her, you're lucky, you got raped using a condom. So you find there's so much, there is just so much that is going on in society, and people are feeling overwhelmed. People are feeling overwhelmed. So sometimes you put on a scale, should I pursue this? Do I have the resources to pursue this? Or should I just ignore it and pursue this? Because I go to the police station, sometimes I go to maybe even my parents. Let's talk about incest, where young people have been violated, and they've been violated by their father. But the mother is protecting her marriage, or they are protecting the family image. So then they compromise the rights of this young person. And it's not just girls, it's boys as well. Yes, it's boys as well. So as a nation, as a society, we need to go back to the drawing board and really trigger conversations about the foundations of society. Are we socializing rightly? Are parents present enough? Are we too absent from the home? Are we impacting the values that we want to see 10 years from now? Are we doing that?
And Pasaris, I know you wanted to add something to what Chigai and Senator were talking about, we're touching on. But then now this is happening in a county that you represent thousands and thousands and hundreds of women in lodgings, in places that are questionable. What are you going to do with Nairobi County Governor Johnson Sakaja in terms of looking at these places, you know, sort of like not really surveying, but walking around to ensure that should this business be closed and should this not be closed?
Okay, first of all, you know, you've had incidences. The whole world has changed. It's online. Okay, so Airbnb, it's online. Uber, it's online. Bolt is online. The biggest failure of society is when an incident happens and you fail to arrest the perpetrator and bring him to book and throw him into cells and lock him up. Okay, that's the biggest failure. Crime in a capital city, crime will always be there, and crime will get more and more you called it the mystery, what we were coming for today, the mystery murders.
Yes.
I mean, tomorrow it will be even more than today. Every day it's changing. People are getting more devious. Okay, so what I want to say is, you know, I want to touch on what is government doing. All right, so under the Women Reps Office, we have a fund called GAF, the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. And government, in recognizing that, gender-based violence is a big problem in the country, one of the things that women reps were told to focus on were legacy projects that could address sexual gender-based violence. And we saw the polycares in police stations. We saw that they were not well equipped. We saw that when people go and report at the police station, they have they end up in cells or in the offices. All right, so we've spent over 20 million shillings, and we should be launching phase 1 soon. I've been going around with the police, with the DIG and his office to have a look at this. We went around with the PS as well, and also Harriet has been to look into some of the projects we're doing as the government. You know, what are we doing? So we're speaking into the agenda points of the government. Now, when we put these SGBV centers and we put a safe house, right? We also have to figure out when we blame the police, right? When I sat with the DIG, one of the things that he said is that budgets were cut by over 30%. And I think there's an overall austerity measure to cut budgets all across. But I really want to appeal to the president that we do not cut the budgets of the police. We actually have to enhance the budgets of the police. We have to equip the police. We have all these hotlines. I actually sat down, and we're about to integrate all these hotlines from the civil society, from government, and from the police together in real time to really know what is going on the GBV area. So my team in Nairobi, with government funding, is really trying to have a holistic approach to SGBV. And I feel that once we get it right in the capital city, then it can be replicated. We did the same with, I remember when drug and alcohol abuse was such a big thing, while Mushamba, as woman rep in Kiambu, actually came up with a rehab center to see how you could help the people that are on drug and alcohol abuse. But the big elephant in the room is an idle mind is the devil's playing field. We need to make sure that our youth, first of all, right now, we've got children that finish primary, that have not gone into secondary, not because they didn't have the grades, not because, one, we've sent them to schools where the parents don't even know where those counties are. Two, they don't have the money to even buy the uniform. I mean, I picked up a kid recently from through the chief, a person who works at the chief's office in Imaradaima, a child of 401 marks, and a school somewhere in the village. Thank God Moi Forces Academy agreed to take him, and thank God that I got a person who donated 100,000, and I was quickly able to buy his uniform and put him in school. But what did it take? 30,000. How many families in Nairobi have 30,000 to dress up their children? So we have made life so hard that if we don't solve this hardship, we're going to have increased mental health, we're going to have frustrations being meted out on women. I, as a politician, go into the slums. I was there on Friday talking to sex workers, and the youth were waiting for me. I had 40 sex workers in a church in Korogocho. When I came out, there were about 50 youth waiting for me, rough on me. And I thought to myself, I have 2 armed bodyguards. You're so rough on me. And I am an elected leader with 2 armed guards. You're banging on my window. You're stopping me from going into my car. You're trying to get money out of me by force. You know, I sat down with those youth, and I said, and one of them is actually employed in Nairobi County. And I'm thinking, even by giving them a job, they still feel they can extort. So if they're doing that to me as an elected leader, what are they doing to my girls in the informal settlement? We have to really, we have a crisis, and I think it's not government alone. It's not civil society alone. It's every citizen's responsibility to get it right.
All right. Ladies, you only have like 3 minutes, so I'll give a minute each, your closing remarks, and I'll start with Chigai. The questions like, of course, late suspects reported, Matara, who's a suspect arrested. And I mean, the government has intelligence on some of this information. Why does it take long to have these suspects brought to book?
Well, I think that question should be directed to DCI, the investigative agency. But let me say this, out of globally 60% of women have been violated. When you bring it down home, it means for every 5 women who are working, 4 have been violated in one way or another. And we are seeing women and children. We've also seen the high rate of pregnancies in this country. Those children were violated. So, despite all this, I think you've had the directives that chiefs should stop having chief barazas to solve these problems, because that is also a problem.
Right.
We're also calling upon the DCI investigative agencies that a lot needs to go in terms of collecting of evidence and processing that evidence and forwarding those files to DPP so that these cases can be prosecuted within the shortest time possible.
All right.
I talked about the wheels of justice. It is a 360 approach. It's investigations, prosecution, and then sentencing.
All right.
That wheel of justice, we've been doing it in 5-10 years. It needs to be 6 months.
All right. All
Yeah.
right. Irene Ochola.
Yes.
You closing remarks in a minute.
I think we need to start talking about how do we recover from this? How do we turn the wheel back? And I think we need to start from a point where we are starting to teach the young people amongst us self-acceptance, that I don't have to always see myself through somebody else's lens. And when I start zeroing back into that energy, it's able to trigger me to other higher goals than the ones that we find our young people are trapped in today.
All right. And Uruba, your closing remarks, Senator, but allow me to, as I'm getting your closing remarks in a minute, allow me to put this question to you. You know, recently you came out forthright, loud and clear, like, I need to talk about this, you know, what was happening to you in Parliament. What would you like to tell families who are now, they're looking at them, you know, the community is looking at them like, it's like there's a bit of some shame on you. This is why your daughter was killed. This is how your daughter died.
You know, shame has been used as a tool against women. I keep telling women, just be shameless. Because if you're shameless, you will protect yourself from a lot of things. You know, so many women could come out and say, this guy who lives next door has been harassing me. But they are shameless. They have a lot of shame, so they'll be like, people will see me, they'll think I'm a prostitute. Just be shameless, because it's a tool that is used. They try to use it on me, but I said, hey, this is happening. And you know, you saw the repercussions of that, is that I was being punished by speaking up. So if I'm a senator and I'm speaking up and I'm being punished, who is going to speak up? Nobody's going to speak up. So that whole idea of shame, my gospel is just dare to be shameless, because you will protect yourself from a lot of things by not allowing people to use that tool. But just allow me to wrap up by saying, I think Nyumba Kumi works. If you go to the villages, these shenanigans don't happen there. Because everybody knows who is where at what time doing what with who. It happens. Nyumba Kumi, by the way, if anything, we need to enforce Nyumba Kumi and figure out why is it working in all the villages. But when you come to the cities, there seems to be a problem. So we need to enforce Nyumba Kumi. That's what I think. In terms of the police, the gender desk is something that was well thought of, but the execution of it was just rubbish. Yeah. For instance, this same police at the gender desk, they keep getting transferred. So you train a police officer here who's handling matters here, and then they're transferred. Just, you know, abruptly, they're out of there, and suddenly they have to leave the files, and, you know, those cases just lapse. So the gender desk, I'll pick up this challenge with the Ministry of Gender, as well as...
it's good Chigai is here.
Yeah, Chigai as well, because I think it's something that we can fix. That's something that we need to be intentional about, so that we can be able to say, okay, this was meant for this purpose, and it's going to work. And then I want to close by saying, I have spoken a lot about the narrative, so I won't touch on that much, but let's stop normalizing harassment. Today, I will put up a post that I came to the show here. You know, it will be Slay Queen, Room 360, and then everybody is so normal about it in the comments because it's normal. Yeah, of course, it's normal, because that's some form of harassment. And that small keyboard warrior somewhere in a room then graduates to physical harassment, and finally is going to be some form of matara, chopping off people. So I think, let's stop normalizing this thing where women can be treated however way, you know, because that in itself, if I'm walking on the streets and someone says, you stupid, whatever, you will see 10 or 5 people saying, what did you say to that woman? And then slowly we keep each other in check.
Okay, Dee, I know you can hear me. We've run out of time. I'm just requesting for a minute, because just to get Chigai's statement, because when the senator was saying the gender desk, and you echoed like they're poorly like managed or handled, but as an advisor to the president on gender matters, what are you going to do to ensure that this gender desk actually achieve the mandate that they are supposed to be, to be doing?
Okay, first, I think to enhance the police, first we need proper resourced forensic labs. I think that's the starting point. We also need to train a police unit on GBV. And I would even go further and say we need a sex crimes unit to deal with these issues, or GBV unit just to deal with GBV matters.
Right.
So that no matter where you're transferred, we know you're going to deal with GBV issues there. Right. We also need to have prevention and response action plans and M&E. I was in Makueni. 50% of crime in Makueni is GBV related. And the other 50 is well distributed within the other crimes rate. What does that tell us?
Right.
We also need to upscale and work with private sector. Companies like Safaricom, I know company like EABL have very good gender-lensed policies that private sector needs to scale up and adopt.
Right.
Issues to do with data. We actually need to have proper and real-time data on matters violence against women and children, so that we can be able to have an wholesome approach, and even a depository of this data so that it's centralized.
Right, I've run out of that minute.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you very much.
I need my minute.
Okay.
Okay, so let me end by saying my party leader, Raila Odinga, issued a statement recently, and in essence he said it is sad to see a troubling increase in the deaths of young women, leaving a trail of grief for families and friends. The abnormality of these murders cannot become the new normal. Murder is and will always be wrong, and there is no excuse. The ugly scourge of murder of women is now a national emergency. It is a threat to the homeland security. It must come to an end. This was Raila's statement that he made. I'd like to hear the President of the Republic of Kenya also make a statement, because femicide is real and the women are concerned, and we are going to take to the streets like we did in My Dress, My Choice. We're going to take to the streets because we do not want women murdered and the forces that be. And I've heard men say that women representatives 6 should be scrapped because what have they said? Well, I want them to know one thing. What are the men saying? What are the men leaders saying? They're the majority in the electorate. If you want to send the women reps home, we're not the ones committing those offenses, right? So if there's anyone to be sent home, it's the male leaders, not the women leaders.
By the way, Mheshimiwa,
We've run out of time, ladies.
Harriet and I actually stopped the president from putting out a statement because we said...
Why would you do that?
No, because we don't want statements. We want
action.
We want action.
So we told him.
So what action do we expect?
We told him that if that statement is going to be made, let it be made in form of actions.
So we expect action.
Yes,
I think the president has to make a statement because
he's not an opposition leader.
About everything else.
All right, ladies. Ladies.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't stop him.
But I'm here from the office of the president.
You are here from the office of the president. Yes, Harriet. Yes, we have run out of time, ladies.
Friday, we are having a media.
Okay. All right. That is a signal that I need to wind up. It's yes, and that is why you are here, Harriet Chigai. Okay, thank you.
Office of the president.
Okay, thank you, Harriet Chigai, President.
On behalf of the president.
Okay, thank you, Harriet Chigai, and that is why I had you today, President's Advisor on Women's Rights. Esther Pasi, Asante Sana, Nairobi County Woman Representative, and nominated Senator Gloria Oroba. I can see your all smiles. Thank you. And Irene Ochola from FIDA, the Clans Services Officer. Asante. And of course, Pauline Maniki, an advocate who joined us virtually. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Brenda Zederadido. Of course, sitting in for my colleague Ken Mijungu is still around. Good night. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.
Thank you.